As a youngster, as a 13-year-old, I was impressed with the technology and the fact that here was a boat with a jet engine in it as opposed to propeller driven. This beautiful boat being pulled out, they took the engine out, checked it, put it back in, tied it to a hook at the side of the old pier, and then wound the engine up until you had this shriek of the engine as it blasted out over the loch. Watching it being lifted off its cradle and lowered into the loch by a fairly big crane, but then to see it streaking past the castle, magnificent. I was a young boy when John Cobb was here. He was a big, quiet man, and he always took time to talk to any of us. I spent a lot of my time in the summer holidays down at the pier where everything was going on. And every time he came past, he would always stop and talk. He made a great impression on me. He was just a big, quiet gentleman.
He was the record breaker's record breaker. That's really what it was. He spent his whole life breaking records, whether they were the fastest ever lap at Brooklands, which was a fantastic achievement. I mean, imagine 143 miles an hour average. He was doing 160 and 170 around Brooklands in a car with primitive suspension. That was absolutely amazing. My father was taking us for a drive around the north side of Loch Ness, and we came here, I stood at the wall and I looked down and I saw the Crusader boat. And I thought to myself, wow, that is amazing. Even today, that boat would look futuristic. It was just a fantastic thing. And then I began to wonder and ask myself questions. What was all this about? This guy, age 52, was going to go faster than anybody else on water. What an amazing thing to do. Something happened that day, and I suddenly found myself wanting to do this. I suppressed it for years and years and years until eventually it reached a point where I've got to go and do it. That's what started everything off. John Cobb was very much loved amongst the community here. He really was. He took trouble to integrate with the local people. He didn't drive the boat on Sundays. He respected them. They responded in a big, big way. And I remember being in Inverness and seeing all the shops. All the shops had got pictures of Crusader on. Others had models of Crusaders. And of course, there wouldn't have been any production in those days, so they would have been handcrafted models. People were very, very impressed and very, very involved in this whole thing.
After several weeks of attempts and trials, on the 29th of September 1952, the boat broke up and he crashed and was killed.
The glories that he had won during his lifetime were not for himself, but for his country. For John Cobb was, above all, a great Englishman.
The most sensible thing to do is to have a big reception like this for people to come and see and just come and learn about John Cobb and the Crusader project. And by having the exhibition like this, hopefully it'll renew the whole thing and people will remember it for perhaps the next 70 years.
The search for the engine was made for many years without success until in 2019, Craig Wallace, with equipment from Kongsberg Maritime, managed to locate the wreck, first of all using sonar, which gave us a data image. But as Craig said at the time, people don't believe data images, they want to see pictures.
Every day we were working out in the loch. The people in the community were asking me how we got on, what did we find? And you know, even something that happened 70 years ago is just as relevant today as it was back then. I think the presentations we've done today to the community and actually further afield has been great. I've had chats with people who've been involved not just with Crusader, but they've seen the television programmes of other lost craft that have been raised. And I would say that my opinion has changed somewhat. When it comes to raising Crusader, I was somewhat torn previously. I really felt that the Crusader should have been left in situ. However, after speaking to a lot of people today, I realised how important Cobb is to the community. I feel now, after speaking to people today, that perhaps raising would be the best way to remember Cobb. What we've seen with other crafts, such as Bluebird, that was raised, and it's actually done a greater service to the remembrance of those drivers. And perhaps raising Crusader would do the same memory and justification for Cobb.
One of the things I think that epitomises what he meant and means to the people of the Glen is the final statement on his monument, which is honour to the brave and to the humble. That in itself points out what he was, but the fact that that monumental cairn was paid for by the people of a Highland Glen in memory of an Englishman shows the sort of respect in which he was held.